Greetings, members of the intelligentsia, and welcome to the latest discussion in Roll Off a Tangent, an organisation dedicated to putting an end to the drugs problem by getting people high on fantastic literature instead.
Oh,
Today we
that's
will
great, Robert. Sorry, go on.
today we will chat about a short tale by classic SF author A E van Vogt. The Monster appeared in the August 1948 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. That's to say, during the magazine's golden age, when it led the field without serious rival, and has frequently been anthologized since. It appears in the author's second collection, Destination Universe, uh, which contains many other excellent tales, though none surpassing The Monster. The plot's current flows from negative to positive. We begin with utter desolation and despair, and we end in triumph. In the eerie opening scene, we find ourselves in a lonely, weed-grown landscape on a far future Earth, at a moment when alien beings from a distant star are drifting down in their energy bubbles to examine the deserted landscape. The explorers, called the Ganae, are looking for worlds to colonize. One of these Ganae, called Enash, is the viewpoint character of the tale. Enash and his fellow Ganae observe that this world is lifeless apart from vegetation, but also that skeletons of its bipedal natives, such as we, are neatly and tidily placed all over the landscape. This tells the reader that mankind, who for some reason is extinct, met his end calmly. For their own security, the Ganae want to know what caused this destruction of life. They decide to interrogate some of the dead, which entails bringing them back to life by means of a super scientific equivalent to necromancy, involving the tracing of a cellular memory that can linger in an organism's remains. The process results in a dramatic sequence of resurrections, during which the ruthlessness of the Ganae becomes apparent to the reader. First to be restored to life is a mummified Egyptian found in a museum's sarcophagus. They don't learn anything from him, and he in turn has a low opinion of the strange gods that face him. He is swiftly destroyed with a blast from a ray gun. Then it is the turn of a 20th century man who assumes he is having a drunken nightmare. He also is quickly disposed of. Thirdly, an individual from a far later period is resurrected. He immediately understands his situation and displays some advanced powers which force the Ganae to destroy him while still not having learnt the reason for human extinction. They take the risk of resurrecting a fourth man, who, however, shocks them by vanishing on the instant that he is brought to life. This demonstration of teleportational power, combined with total insight, is crisis for the Ganae. They now fear that the human, who in their terms is the monster, may have the power to learn their two key secrets: their system for locating habitable planets, plus their system of reviving the dead, and thus that they may revive humanity and challenge the Ganae control of space. The darkly paranoid Ganae, we now learn, are genocidal. It is their custom to annihilate the inhabitants of populated worlds before adding them to their growing empire, and sensing their guilt, they fear all the more when their power is challenged. The author's style indeed hints ever more strongly at their impending doom, in a portentously ominous soundtrack of dramatic irony which intensifies as the story proceeds, so that we become sure that these villains, in carrying out their imprudent resurrections, have dug their own graves. In fact, the source of this tale's special power lies surely in its empathetic portrayal of the super evil, guilt haunted Ganae. Now, the resurrected fourth man does eventually show himself to the Ganae. Because of his super mental control of energy fields, they cannot kill him, but he and they briefly converse to satisfy their mutual curiosity. He tells them the reason for humanity's extinction, a nucleonic storm which swept in from intergalactic space on too wide a front to avoid. Lacking the Ganae's special knowledge of how to locate habitable planets, man had not been able to find an alternative home and so had perished with calm dignity. The Ganae decide that they have fulfilled their mission, since one single unkillable biped monster need not prevent them from reporting to their superiors that Earth is suitable for colonization. The climax comes far out in space on board the Ganae starship during their voyage back. One of them sees that the monster is aboard. Terrified that he will learn all their secrets and then teleport back to Earth, all they can think of is to destroy themselves by plunging their ship into a star. Only at the very last, as the ship is heating up, does the protagonist, Enash, realize that the monster must already have gained all he wanted before they left Earth and had deliberately shown himself merely so as to trick them into this self-destructive move. The story ends with Enash in his final moments of life trying vainly to warn the others that they have all been fooled. One last point before I hand you over to my teammates. I've heard it suggested that the author may be intending to put forth a sort of twinge of sympathy for these ultra evil villains. We might just like to listen to the last 12 lines and see if you agree with me. Here are the last 12 lines. In a few moments now, he would be leaving the ship, secure in the knowledge that shortly no alien mind would know his planet existed, knowing too that his race would live again and this time never die. Enash staggered to his feet, clawed at the roaring communicator, and shouted his new understanding into it. There was no answer. It clattered with the static of uncontrollable and inconceivable energy. The heat was peeling his armored hide as he struggled to the matter transmitter. It flashed at him with purple flame. Back to the communicator he ran, shouting and screaming. He was still whimpering into it a few minutes later when the mighty ship plunged into the heart of a blue-white sun. Right. So, Comrade Zuef, what are your views?
Well, Conrad Gibson. I have a lot of things to say about this story. I will begin in a point by point system. So first of all, I really like the setting. It's very inventive. I like that our protagonist is not a human actually, but an alien, and we follow them mostly within their mind. It is seldom that a sci-fi work actually has an alien in the center of the story, and humans as an afterthought, so to speak. Although they are the Earth is the basis and the core of the issue, we are experiencing all of this from the perspective of the alien. That's very interesting. Um, in fact, I would even say that the last human, the fourth human resurrected, is kind of very similar to Conan in God in the Ball, where he is an observant mostly to the situation and is the one who ultimately provides the ending to what has transpired, right? But he is not the source of the like the conflict. The source of the conflict here, just as in God in the Ball, is the alternative motives of different individuals. Now, that said, the aliens themselves don't really have a character, despite being despite being absolute despots. That's kind of their one trait, that they are, although sympathetic in some ways, they are quite irredeemable. And the only way an Ash becomes interesting is because he is able to think for himself faster than the rest of his ilk, even though that doesn't save him in the end. Um, I'm struggling to see what kind of a metaphor or what exactly was the purpose of what transpired, if we're trying to find some higher meaning within the work. Perhaps I will find out through discussing it with you guys. But suffice it to say, before I say more on the story, I will just like to conclude this current point with saying that as an outset, a concept and a read, it was enjoyable. I enjoyed the how fresh the idea was, and I found the setting interesting. So from that point of view, I did enjoy the story. But as to more of my thoughts, I think we can wait a little bit on that. Actually, what did you feel about this story?
So the it's
Excuse me.
at first I thought the monster was to be resurrected was a literal monster, um, but it's interesting to have it flip on its head in the sense that usually we don't see stories where humanity are the
Antagonist, perhaps?
not just antagonists, but
Something to be feared.
something to be feared. Exactly, in such a profound way, actually, because the fourth man revived proved that by the time humanity died out, they have came into possession some real godlike powers. We're
Basically
talking about,
magic, right?
yeah, it's like it's not even magic, man. It's like what were we talking about here? Instantaneous transportation within 90 light years.
I
That's
mean, it's
yeah,
Dragon Ball Z, right?
exactly. It's like uh quite aside from that, it's also very clear that whatever limitations we had, the humanity had in terms of intellectual capacity, had grown much larger by the time the fourth guy had rolled around. And I think it is also implied that they are pretty much immortal, except through severe physical damage, such as the nucleonic storm. I have no idea what that is. I don't think. I think it's a figment of the author's imagination. The nucleonic storm that swept through the system, that blanketed the area in like 90 light years radius, I guess. Yeah. So it's very refreshing, I would say, to have humanity as the ultimate big bad. Yeah. As for the genocidal nature of the Ganae, whatever, Ganae, I felt that was a little bit abrupt. Just felt kind of inserted midway through as like a very casual toss away without any build up in the beginning, because and it felt a little bit 180 degrees, to be honest. We started the story off with them reviving. Apparently it is customary for them to revive the previous inhabitants of the planet. For what reason we don't really know.
Well, yes, we're told that it's to discover what happened to life on that planet. They were
Yes.
hoping to learn.
And also it's quite clearly seen that this is a malicious thing, because immediately when they're not when whatever they learn doesn't suffice for them, they just destroy that creature that they just brought back. So I don't know if it's
I can
180.
I can totally see humans doing that if we just walked around like, oh, this guy
Yeah,
doesn't seem that nice and a little bit dangerous maybe. So let's get rid of him first. But I mean,
I
it's
didn't, I
like
didn't,
a
I didn't say that it doesn't. I mean, like, yeah, for sure, we could also do that. Actually, that's one of my points, that it kind of seems like we're not really better than the Ganae in the story,
yeah,
but I don't know.
yeah.
I mean, they're evil from the beginning, don't you think? But maybe you have a different point.
I think I wouldn't stretch it as far as to say evil. Not nice, sure. But evil
Hmm.
is a little bit I wouldn't have gone that far at that point in the story. And then
I see, I see.
that's kind of why the genocidal thing felt a little bit thrown in at the last minute kind of feel to me. But yeah, it's definitely a progressive thing where the Ganae gradually showed their true, shall we say, colors, shape, form. Not that the human was any better, to be honest. Um,
Well, the humans didn't annihilate other races by pouring radiation down onto their
I
worlds.
mean, that's
No,
true.
but the human does threaten that he will basically cull their population.
Yeah,
Well, that sounds like a good
very
idea to me.
that's a
Hmm? What
very
did you
Robert. What
go
did you
on?
say?
I was saying that sounds like a good idea. I mean, if faced with the gun,
Yeah, I mean, look, just because they're evil, doing something evil onto them is not morally correct, right?
well, is
Well,
it for preventing worse things?
actually, I wouldn't. I wouldn't say that the human is evil. Now that I think about it, just very when you have that much power, imagine what it's like to have that much power.
Hmm.
It, things might have like the Ganae must have seemed like their fate must have seemed fairly inconsequential, just like I suppose a human would to an ant.
For sure,
Hmm.
right? But this is more of a. All right, let's take for example the religion I know best, the Christian religion. If we were to apply the same moral, um, unambiguity to God in that scenario where He is Almighty, and put Him on the stance of this individual who told these beings that, well, we're gonna cull you. You wouldn't really wanna attribute that to a good, caring God. You would attribute that to a vengeful, irritable God, not something that you would want to see in, um, as your deity, right? So to me, it's kind of, if you're applying some sort of morality to this individual, if you are godly, if you have that much power, don't you have some responsibility to use it wisely?
Does he use the word cull? I'm just wondering.
Well, he basically says we will control your population.
That's
We will
right. That's
control.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's the same.
Well, depends how it's done. I mean, that he
Yeah,
might.
but I mean, it's meant as a threat, right? Like
Yeah.
they're all horrified at the
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
and to me, it's clearly implying in the tale that he means it as a threat. Otherwise, the author wouldn't, uh, you know, propagate it the way he did in the narrative. But
Right.
anyway, that's just my opinion. That's the way I see it.
He might be putting some chemical into their breeding chambers.
I think I don't think it is a threat, nor do I think the human was being very evil. I mean that so I think he is just so secure in his omnipotence and and he's just really indifferent to the Ganae because of that power. Because implied implied in that sentence, we'll just control your population, is that the humans eventually will take over. So I don't, it's it's an arrogance, um it's supremely arrogant. But if it's backed by a great deal of power that can actually make it happen, then it's just I don't know, man. It's like probably not even a threat, it's a promise.
Sure, whether it's a promise or a threat, it doesn't really matter. My point is different. My point is that I am saddened to see that is what the author thinks we would do as humans if we had this omnipotent power. Um, as a person who believes in God, I would hope that if we were to reach something even close to the Almighty's power, that we would try and use it in a better way than this.
Well, it would be very kind to the other inhabitants of the universe if we did control the Ganae breeding chambers.
Oh, you mean you would save others with this evil? I mean,
Certainly.
maybe, but if we are that powerful, couldn't we find a better solution?
Well, I must say, you guys are a really moral lot. I just
don't put XJ into this barrel. I'm here on my own.
no,
I would feel pain. I would feel pained if I was capable of feeling that.
no. I mean, I'm a Christian too, and I think that one would probably have a Christian duty to control the Ganae somehow. Because, as I say, if one could do that, it means that if one nevertheless didn't do it, then one is not helping the other beings in the universe when one could, and that seems to be
Well, okay,
immoral.
I'll give you an example of how this could be solved without the culling. In a
Yeah,
lot of ways, a promise of such a situation happening is a deterrent enough for most beings or species
yeah,
to not continue the way they've been continuing. Just as an
mm,
example, right? That's also not, I'm just a human being myself. That's also not a perfect solution, but
mm.
y- you know, just the threat of that hanging over the head of an entire species, they might start thinking, "Huh, maybe we shouldn't." You know.
Yeah. That's true. Well, one would try that first. I
Yeah,
agree.
it's just in the story. It's kind of an ultimatum of sorts,
Well, it's a
right?
very
Similar.
short story. I mean, it's only 16
Yeah,
pages.
yeah. Look, well, we have to discuss it on its merits,
Um,
right?
yeah.
I can't discuss it on. Well, if it was 50 pages, Robert, it would have a different conclusion. Well, it's not 50 pages, is it?
Well, it would go into these ins and outs more if it was 50
Sure,
pages.
but like again, we have to discuss it on the basis of what is actually
Yeah.
in front of us, not try and create something for the author. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I agree. I think what's in front of us actually is an example of um, it's Van Vogt at his best is like a sort of hallucination, if you like. He's one of these authors who one could easily believe is writing the story with kind of mad staring eyes popping out of his head. You know, it probably wasn't, but his best fiction has a very hallucinatory quality, and I think this is like that. I think one, although I agree one should take it literally as a story with the words on the page, there's
Mhm.
also a kind of something dreamlike about it or nightmarish about it.
That is for sure. I think the atmosphere is very
The
well
atmosphere, yeah.
kept. Yeah, it's very well kept in the story. Yeah, actually, did
Mm.
you want to say something else? But I've kind of started this argument in the middle of your giving your review. My apologies.
Uh, no, I think the ensuing discussion was fascinating. Just
Oh.
yeah, interesting to me to see your take and Rob's take. To be honest, that's why I was leaning back and then just listening. Hmm. Yeah. um. Yeah. Unlike you, Nikki, I wasn't particularly struck by any moral conundrum within the
Mm.
story, but that's just from my perspective. I think it's very clear that there are no good guys in the story, but I never liked stories with good guys anyway. So
Mm.
I like I like my good guys to have flaws because truly good people are insufferable.
Thank you, man. Um, right. Well, I mean, I think I get what you mean by that point.
It wasn't
I
aimed at
will.
anybody in the panel,
I
really.
know.
Is but I
I know. I
think you
know.
know what I
I
mean. Huh?
decided. I
Yeah,
decided to take it upon myself.
yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
so
He-Man was charming, but after a while, he gets very, very, very,
boring.
very boring. Yeah.
I see what you mean. Yeah,
Mm.
I mean, one of the if I mean, I'm gonna go off on a tangent like always. And there's a reason why I mentioned Conan, but I'll mention that reason a little bit later. A lot of the later work that came out, um, which depicted Conan, a lot of it, in my opinion at least, fell short of Robert E. Howard's work, not Robert Gibson's. Although I'm sure he would write a nice pastiche of Conan if he ever wanted to. It's because
Oh, you open
it.
up a can of worms, Nikki. Now he has to do it.
um,
No.
is that Robert E. Howard's work is sulked in some sense of darkness, imminent darkness of the Hyborian age. It has this feeling of irreversible consequences, of terrible blots that occur and happen within the
Mm.
stories. Some unstoppable evils that Conan can only overcome because he is too daring to die. And a lot of the pastiches take Conan and they make him a sword and sorcery adventurer who is having fun. And yes, Conan does have fun in the stories that we've read of Robert E. Howard, but it's a very different type of fun. It is a type of fun of like, well, even though I'm facing death, I raise my cup because tomorrow I may not be able to. And in the stories that follow, it is all about the He-Man type of enjoyment of like, haha, I am a great warrior. Shut up, small imp. Boom. I'm bigger than life, right? He becomes a caricature of what Conan was actually about. Because Conan really lives in a world that's foreign to him and that wants to kill him. And he finds joy despite of that situation, right? Whereas Conan, in most prestigious, he finds that his circumstances are a joke, right? He doesn't take a lot of these points seriously. He's like, well, I crab, ha ha, and so on and so forth. So
Mm.
um, that's kind of, if that's the type of thing that you dislike about Goody Two Shoes, XJ, that's kind of my point too. I think I see that exactly, right? Like you can't
Mm.
take the story seriously after that.
I will take the spirit of your words and agree with you. Except when I say He-Man, like, have you seen He-Man, like the cartoon?
Yes. Yeah.
He is He-Man is not at all like Conan
No. He,
because He-Man is I fall back to the word insufferable.
Mm.
that he is preaching all the time.
mm,
He The one thing I'll say about He-Man is that he truly does live by his principles. He never raises his fist in anger. He solves all his problems not through violence, uh, No,
Doesn't he have a gigantic sword?
He has a gigantic sword, but almost all of the resolutions of every episode of He-Man ever is true words and kind deeds. It's
Okay.
it's not
I
at
feel
all.
cheated.
It's not at all. There is, so he uses his tremendous strength and power to stop things, but he doesn't hit back in turn. Like, you know what I mean? It's like he would, if some meteor was crashing down, he would stand in the way of the meteor and stop it, and then whatever the looting and burning that maybe occurs after, he was solved by just telling everybody, hey guys, let's all calm down and let's talk it out. That kind of feeling. That's He-Man.
But don't you think that's like good for children, right? To learn that kind of resolution.
It totally it is, and I suppose for children it is very good. But that's why it's insufferable as an adult watching those stuff. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay.
Because it's not
I see.
believable.
That's unfortunate, but it's also true. All right, back to the monster.
Back to the
you will.
monster.
Yeah. So, Robert, do you have any more thoughts before I continue my rant?
Yeah, I haven't get the feeling that a sense of failure in these podcasts, in that I can't really convincingly say what I mean. For example, I'm going to try. I think that in a way, villains need to be appreciated for their sheer villainy, and it's just not being. It's just kind of being disrespectful to the Ganae, for example, to be kind to them. I mean, they're the villains, they're the evil ones. So we've got to try and do them credit for being proper villains and do everything we can to stop them. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Because they really are good. They really are good. I mean, they really are effective villains.
Oh, you're tripping up there, Robert. Tell us what you really think.
It's so difficult, this.
So someone in the comments will write Freudian slip. Huh?
I think the only good Ganae is a dead Ganae, basically.
Oh my God, you're quoting Starship Troopers now. He's quoting Starship Troopers, huh? Okay, so to me, one of the ways that I think the story could improve, while not to say that I didn't enjoy the story, it doesn't have its merits, as I previously said. I really enjoyed it, a lot of aspects of it. But I think one way that it can improve is based on the comparison I made right at the beginning with Conan's story, God in the Ball. Because what it was really good at was inserting character into those individuals who were around Conan and the investigation. And here I wanted to see more of personality from the Ganae, a little bit more. I get that that the story itself is grand, and that there's a lot of dressing up that you need to do in order for us to get it and for it to work. But the fact that we have like three conversations in the story, and two of them are just set pieces, like, haha, isn't it funny that they're talking to an Egyptian? Haha, isn't it funny that this guy died as a drunk in an accident? Like, I feel like we could just do a little bit more between these characters to get a sense of them, right? Because as you rightly pointed out, Robert, these are the bad guys, and we want to see them fall in a catastrophic manner. But I think the fall would be even stronger if I knew who they were as people a little bit more. If the general basically said, like, well, I did the same stuff on Verona 7, and it was all fine then. In fact, that one last survivor, I still have him in a cage, and occasionally I get to enjoy his pleading because I have the skeleton of his wife or something, right? Like, if you're gonna push on the idea that these people are terrible, and that one of them is like even so horrible that he uses this reconstruction thing to hold it over the head of one who he is like has imprisoned or something, right? Um,
I don't think they're
just that
that
was
bad,
just an
though.
idea.
No,
Hmm?
they're not that bad. I mean,
No, I know they're not. It's more like I came up with just one idea
yeah,
on the fly.
yeah. Their thing is paranoia, paranoid desire for supremacy, and in fact, it says interestingly in one point of the story that on some occasions they have allowed the Aboriginal population of some planets to exist in little out of the way enclaves. Because they're not worth the trouble of exterminating, as
Yeah,
long
or the extermination would somehow impact the Ganae living on the
yeah,
planet. Yeah,
yeah, that sort of thing. So
yeah,
as long as
yeah.
they're top dog, they're not really interested they're not really interested in any kind of sadism or anything like that. They just want to
Yeah,
be top
as
dog.
I said, I completely agree with you. That was just, I was just trying to give you an example of how to add more
Mm,
depth to one of these Ganai. Not necessarily that is the way I would go. It's just,
mm,
one typical very villainous thing that came
mm,
to mind, right?
yeah. Perhaps they haven't got a lot of depth though. Perhaps once when you're like that, if you're like that, then you forfeit. You sort of hollow yourself out as regards personality, and there isn't really any kind of depth in you except this kind of ravenous urge for power. You
I
can
think
probably see that
mm,
in human beings, some sorts of human beings as well.
there is one philosophical point that is quite interesting in the story. And it comes from our protagonist in Ash when he begins thinking about, well, I always saw myself as an observer of this entire situation. I never felt as a participator. But now I am understanding what we have been doing and to whom and how it is affecting us. Remember when he starts
Mm,
uh, basically taking away the veil of being just a spectator? I feel that is an interesting commentary on a lot of individuals who participate in things that are, uh, you know,
yeah.
not the most, um, how would I say it? Not the most benevolent, but sort of themselves as well. I'm not part of this. I'm just observing this from afar.
Yeah, it's an effective part of the story.
Yeah. So I really like that part. I really enjoyed that character development for an Ash. I just wish
Mm,
there was a bit more of it for other ones, other aliens.
yeah. Yeah, I wonder what you'd think of another of Van Vogt's stories, which is much longer. It's about 30 or 40 pages longer, called Asylum, which is about, you might say, space vampires. So
Ooh, okay. I mean, space vampires. I'm kind of on board. If you,
yeah,
if maybe don't spoil it on the podcast because I actually want
no,
to
no, no,
read it
no.
in that case.
Yeah.
Maybe we could discuss it at some point.
Hmm.
Yeah. Actually, did you have any more thoughts on the story, the monster?
Mm, not not really. I think for me, what really struck me the most about this particular story is simply the reversal of positions that humans usually occupy in such stories. Uh,
Yeah.
Humans are usually the ones being conquered, the ones being destroyed, the ones being chased, so to speak, the lower rung on the ladder, and in this particular story, it's completely the other way around.
Yeah.
The
Hmm.
ancient, basically, the humans are the ancient evil that should not be awoken. Kind of like Lovecraftian
Hmm.
monster, don't you think?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, in many ways. You're right.
Yeah,
Hmm.
so it's very refreshing to see that sort of flip.
Hmm.
It doesn't happen often, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No.
Hmm.
What do you think more like do you think the story went into that idea effectively or do you think it could have done a little bit more with the concept of us being this awoken eldritch being?
Yeah. So I think well, I don't want to try to guess what the author was trying to achieve with this short story, but if I were to try to maintain that very eldritch feeling, I wouldn't have I wouldn't have revived the first three people, if you know what I mean. Just try to keep the mystery a little bit stronger. Um, Not dive into the characteristics of the the humans all that much. Because when you pull the veil away, a lot of the cosmic horror works because we don't know that much about the cosmic horror. Is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So the horror element is missing in this piece because there's too much light has been shone on our cosmic horror, so to speak. Yeah, but then I don't know what the author was aiming for. So, yeah.
Hmm.
Fair
Hmm.
enough.
He probably didn't know either. I think Van Vogt's one of these authors who mine a rich vein of genius, if you like, and they, they don't really know where it comes from, and when it's gone, they don't realize it's gone. So they carry on writing long after they've lost their talent, which is rather sad. But there you go.
Does that mean that his much later works were terrible in your opinion?
Yeah, more or less, I would say. Yeah, yeah.
Interesting.
Like
Interesting.
Arthur C. Clarke, in other words, or indeed
Mm,
Isaac Asimov in some ways, and Heinlein, they just lose their touch. But
Well,
that,
I think Isaac
mm,
Asimov created so much work because he was gaining a lot of capitalistic value from it, and it wasn't even anymore about whether or not he had something to say. It was a
yeah,
job for him, right? He kind of said so in a couple of interviews himself. So to
mm,
me, it kind of always felt like um, if you read between the lines, he was kind of like, well, this is making me money, so I'm gonna continue writing, right?
yeah, I suppose so. Although the decline wasn't totally even in his case. I think one of
That's
his
true.
late novels, Nemesis, although it's very wordy, it actually grows on me. I've read it several times and I'm liking it more and more. But mostly, it's a sad tale of decline, I think.
Hmm. Do you
Very
have
good
an
decline.
author like that actually that you think that they were in their prime and then with time their work declined?
yeah,
Someone you
yeah.
yeah
G.R.R. Martin.
really you think that the series
No,
worsens?
I just wanted to find a way to stick it. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, so yeah, actually, I do think he declined.
Uh-huh.
His first few books was really really good because it is low magic and everything was just a struggle. But then, spoilers, somebody came back. We all know who, for those who've read it. Uh, and it
That didn't
just,
happen in the book though
no, it
yet.
did. It did.
When?
Came back as a zombie.
Oh, started with a C.
Yeah, started with a C.
Okay, I see. I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So,
Okay, okay. I thought you were talking about somebody else. My apologies.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Carry on.
it came back, and then that just ruined the whole flavor that he had built up before. And another guy is Patrick Rothfuss. His first book was amazing. Like, I don't think I've
Oh,
ever read The Name of the
something with
Wind.
wind.
The Name
Yeah,
of the
name of the
Wind.
wind.
You have the book.
Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
showed it
have
to
the
me.
book, but I haven't read it.
That's okay. Uh, but the second book was just terrible. Oh, I don't know what the point was. It was like the dude, the main dude, who was so powerfully fleshed out in the first book, became a garish stew in the second book. Yeah.
That's sad.
So yes, absolutely. I know authors that have declined. I hope to not inhabit those shoes myself. But yeah, can't ever really tell.
Well, I think there's a reason why they decline. It's not just that they lose their touch, is that they never understood what their touch was in the first place. They ascribed their success to the wrong reasons. This is my guess, and so they don't keep to, they don't keep on the straight line, which would enable them to continue as they were.
Actually, there is another guy whose works I used to really love but declined, and I don't think it's because he didn't know what his magic touch was, and that's Stephen King. I have grown to become very uninterested in his works. And I think it's just because he just kept writing. He just didn't stop. On some level, that's very admirable. But yeah, I just lost interest. And he has kept it up for so long that I don't think it's because he did not understand what his magic touch was.
Maybe.
I think he's still writing at the time of this podcast.
He is still writing. Or he has written so many books and he's just taking it out of his bank, so to speak.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I mean, we read one of his first outings as an author on the podcast, The Long Walk, and I hated that, even though that was one of his early works. So maybe he went back onto his routine that he had at the beginning. Maybe he had a golden age and then it ended. Could that be?
I mean, if you didn't like The Long Walk, you probably won't like any of his stuff. And
I like The Shining. I like yeah.
Did you like the movie or did you like the book? Because they're very different. The book.
Okay. The book. I haven't seen the one with Nicholson. I want to watch it. But
let's just say that the movie was way better than the book.
Really?
Yeah, because it's Stanley Kubrick. Is it Stanley Kubrick or is it Dave?
Yeah, Stanley Kubrick. Yeah. Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick.
The reason that's kind of the reason why I wanted to watch it, because one of my favorite works of fiction is 2001: A Space Odyssey.
In our private chats, you floated the idea of reviewing a movie, and I'm not really that keen on the Terminator, but for The Shining, I would make an exception.
Terminator? No, I said The Predator.
The Predator. But for The Shining, I would make an exception for sure. Yeah.
But we would have to compare the book and the, because there's an opportunity there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, anyway, let's not get there. I shouldn't be the one saying that, honestly. It's a little bit disingenuous of me. But yeah, going back to the monster, I think my main thoughts, it was an enjoyable read. I did not regret my time reading it. That's always a good thing. It is interesting to me that the positions in the story that humans occupy. I am indifferent to the fate of the Ganae, which I suspect is the point. I am also indifferent to the fate of the humans in the story, which I also suspect is the point. Yeah. On those score, I suppose the story worked for me.
It's drama and imagery which Van Vogt is good at. He's probably, well, there's nobody who surpasses Van Vogt at his best. just in those two terms. His imagery and his dramatic encounters are.
Really? Because I thought, in my opinion, I'm very sorry to say, I don't think the imagery was that impressive in this tale.
Right. Well,
What did you? No. I mean,
yeah,
I'm happy to be wrong. That's why I'm asking you. So what do you find so vivid about the imagery? What did I
the
miss?
perhaps imagery is not the right word, but I use the word imagery because it creates scenes in my mind. But perhaps drama is enough for that. The revivals and the beginning, the desolation of Earth and these beings floating down in their force bubbles, and
Yeah, that
of
was cool.
course the last scene with poor old Anash clawing at the communicator and babbling. Um, these things stick in the mind, and the general color of the tale also, the sort of darkness and the feeling that out there are there are enormous evils. It's just something that sticks in the mind, and that's the same with lots of his other stories in his golden period. They may not stand up to close scrutiny. In fact, as far as logic is concerned, it's Van Vogt is notoriously uh, deficient, if you want to call it being deficient, in
Mm.
that a lot of his famous stories have been pulled to pieces, but they're pulled to pieces in a sense, and yet when you've done that, they're still there and they're still unforgettable.
So you're saying Van Vogt is very good at setting up scenes.
Hmm,
There's a
yeah,
that there is a grandeur in the setup that he has painted in this particular story anyway.
yeah.
Uh,
It's a kind of potency of a mixture of the setting, as you say, and also the action. Uh, I find that very, very compelling in his stories. They're dreamlike, if you like, but they're the sort of dream that's not fuzzy wuzzy, but is sharper than reality.
Fair enough. I did feel very taken aback by just how godlike the humans were in are in this particular tale. Yeah.
Mm.
So you have more to say, Nikki. You teased us right from the beginning.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, I've made the comparison with the best saga ever written. I don't even need to name it. Both of my co-hosts know what I'm talking
You
about.
meant Sherlock Holmes?
Of course, yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
No, Conan the Barbarian, you laugh. Yeah. So insofar as that, I can't help but draw the comparison to the supernatural way the humans are portrayed in this tale, because it's actually very similar in insofar as a lot of Robert E. Howard stories, except for People of the Black Circle. Most of the monsters are quite normal, for the lack of a better word. They're supernatural, but they're normal. Saber-toothed tiger, giant, gargantuan ape, um, big spider. You know, there are some moments where something really weird is presented to us. Eyeless elephant man. Um, the before mentioned creatures from the Black Circle and so on and so forth. But here, the horror comes from the ability, just like in Conan's story, it's the ability of the human that that is scary, not their visage. And I like that subversion with a name like the monster. You expect there to be at some point a monster that is described with 8 octopus arms and a large 3-headed visage, gigantic beams coming out of their mouths, so on and so forth. Something monstrous.
Mm.
In fact, That's what I wanted, and that's what I actually said. Like that's what I thought I'd see, but I saw a human instead, and that's a version in and of itself is hard to pull off, to be scared of, right? But if I am honest, if I was in the same room as that individual creature, as that monster, as our future, the human, I'd be afraid. I'd be very afraid for my life. I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Mm.
If that thing can teleport 90, I think it's 90, right? 90 light years in an instant. What else can it do? Yeah, so it's and how cleverly it just looks at Ganae like they are children, right? It's just like
Mm.
I've already won, so I'm just gonna sweep up here my home. I hope you have a nice day, guys. Right? It's just so beautiful. And I love the idea that to a certain extent, because we too are human, we get to cheer for the bad guy for once. We don't we don't have to be like, oh no, this is a horrible, terrible tragedy because the Ganae are us. You know, like we are the humans who came on their planet and it's super horrible. No, no, no. The Ganae came to us and we are kicking their ass, right? And there's something very victorious about it. Even though we're not that great in the story of itself when it comes to morality, right? I mentioned that before. But if you look past that, if you look at this as just a power fantasy for humanity, it's pretty great. Yeah.
Uh, that's another thing that Van Vogt is known for is power fantasies. Uh,
Ah.
you could call him Mr. Power Fantasy, in fact.
Well, in that case, everything has just been explained to me. Now
Hmm.
I understand everything. Okay, awesome. Yeah, I mean, all I
So
have
so
to.
so hang on
Yeah.
a second. Hang on a second. Does that mean that the humanity in all of his tales occupy a position of such
Oh no, no,
magnitude, of such powerful
no. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that. It just means that he's a lot of his work is about individuals who, for some reason, have enormous power.
mm,
His novel Slan, for example, is like that. Very very well known
Doesn't that
novel.
get really boring if your protagonist is, so
Well,
strong?
you would think so, wouldn't you? But actually, if you've got the whole world against you,
Ah, I see.
um,
So they're super villains. Carry on.
well, it's a bit complicated.
so
But
I suppose that's his magic touch then. Power
hmm,
fantasy, Mr. Power Fantasy.
yeah, but also um,
Yeah.
they're not all power fantasies. I mean, the um, the first story in this book, for example, Far Centaurus, is about the first voyage to Alpha Centauri. But the trouble is, it takes so long that by the time the crew gets there, they find that Earth has discovered much faster ways of getting to Alpha Centauri. So they find that the whole place is been colonized ages ago by from Earth.
Damn, talk about a letdown.
Yeah, and they feel really primitive and let down. They're expecting to be big heroes, and they feel really,
I would be pretty bummed.
yeah.
I'd be
But
so
that's
pissed,
quite good.
dude. I'd be like, why didn't you halfway through discovering all this? I don't know. Yeah, like grab us. you know? Oh, I'd be so pissed. I'd be
Mm,
like, I
mm,
need to be paid reparations until the end of my life for this
mm.
atrocity. Literally wasted my time.
So there we are. There's a lot of variety in this book, and the other collection, Away and Beyond, has got 8 more of his early stories. Those two collections are old favourites of mine. I keep rereading the stories.
Mm, all right. Yeah, well, I mean, I am uh, respectfully running out of things to say
Mm.
about the story. And as actually loves to say, we're coming up to an hour,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen.
Well,
So,
I give it 10 out of 10 just to
oh,
end
well,
the
it is a
suspense.
story you submitted,
Yeah.
Robert. So there is no surprise there.
No, it reflects on my good taste.
No, that reflects on your bias. Yeah, carry on. What were you gonna say, actually? You're muted, my dear friend. We cannot hear you.
My apologies. I was just about to say that I have nothing to say.
Oh,
Yeah.
You
Oh,
don't have a score?
I'll give it a 6, I suppose. It's readable. I did enjoy the twist, but it wasn't something that would particularly stick in my head, I think. Although, if I read more of Van Gogh, no, not Van Gogh,
Van Vogt.
Van Vogt. See, I don't even remember the name. Van
Jesus.
Vogt.
Van Gogh. Oh man.
Well,
It's like, yeah, go ahead.
it's like damning with faint praise, I suppose. No, if
Mhm.
my honest take on this is, it feels like one of those authors that I need to read a few more pieces from before I can definitively say if I like him or not.
Mm.
Yeah. So for this one, I would just give it a 6, provincial 6. Just because I really did enjoy the flip on the head. It's just not
You
something
just
that,
wish more was done with the flip.
yeah, I suppose that's a good way to put it. And you, Nikki?
Okay. Yeah, I just forgot about the our semi-recurring, not really recurring segment of a sequel to the monster, because I do have an idea. I did come up with one. So if either of you have one or want to think of one as I'm telling mine, here's your time. I am, as always, very generous. I'll go first. So in in the sequel for the monster, and this is the sequel of this story another way I wanted to see it. So we're not with a benevolent human here, right? Like, so I'm continuing exactly how things were set up in this story. So the sequel to the monster would be um, it would be called The Hero. And the tale would be from the perspective of the humans who are slowly taking over Ganae and are doing exactly what they said they would. And it would be based on the reports that they're sending back to Earth, right? Like, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, and the humans, meanwhile, basically salvaging the some of the interesting technology that the Ganae had that they simply did not. And then reports stop coming in from our humans, and we are put into question. What has transpired? How did the omnipotent creatures that we saw got stopped, maybe, or got lost? Like, what is happening here? Did the communications go down for some other reason? And then we would see the Ganae return to Earth with a peace offering. And the peace offering is summoned thusly: we shall cooperate, and we shall create a mutual alliance between the two of us, create a council of half Ganae, half humans, or Earth will be destroyed. Now, the humans look at this and say, hang on, we have instant transmission, we can walk through walls. We've been destroying you. What is it that you can do to us? And the Ganae say that they can replicate the destruction, the neuronic storm of Earth. And they showcase it by showing data of one of the Ganae's recent world being hit by this neuronic storm and destroying all the humans. That's why the communication has stopped. And so there is this debate between the two, and finally they come to an agreement. And the last moment is of the individual, the Ganae, who who was leading these political movements, years later, on his deathbed, seeing the two, ally together and prosper, revealing to his son a terrible secret that what saved their race was another accident, because they still don't know how to replicate this neuronic storm. It just happened, and they used the opportunity. And that is the end of the hero.
Just a point of correction is nucleonic storm.
Oh, whatever, as you love to say. But yes, sure.
Hmm.
That would be my sequel.
Well.
Does anyone have any of their own ideas? Or if they want to comment on mine?
Well, it's ingenious, but
Oh, thank you.
and it's a possible extrapolation from the plot, but it kind of takes away the splendor of the villainy of the Ganae, I think, if you start portraying them as being negotiators.
Right. I see what you mean by that, for sure. I'm not I wouldn't argue with you on that point. But in my view, I think that it would actually be way better in the world if we didn't villainize everyone and we saw some sides to them that were redeemable, because that makes them more interesting. Right, that's the approach I tried to take with the sequel. But I see exactly what you mean, though. Right, that it does rob a certain part of the story of the villainy of this.
Yeah,
Ganae.
I see what you mean about what will be better for the world. The awkward point is, though, is that I suspect, although I don't know why, that sometimes the moral laws of invented worlds and literature seem to be different from the moral laws in the real world. I don't know how this could be, but it does seem, as a sort of empirical fact of the imagination, that seems to be the case.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's like I knew exactly what I was sacrificing by making the Ganae relatable, but I was okay with that sacrifice for my sequel. Let me put it that way. Yeah. As for the original story, unless actually you've got some comment on my sequel.
I think you could have avoided all that if you just cut out the negotiation part and then just write a story of the Ganae just trying to fight off the humans as they. It's basically a revolutionary story with the humans as conquerors and then the Ganae fighting them off. You could spin a whole saga about that. Having said that, though, I gotta be honest. I don't think I want to see any more stories in this particular universe for some reason.
I mean, it's enough, isn't it? What's been done is enough.
Yeah.
It's a little gem. You don't want to elaborate on it.
Otherwise, you get No Place Like Earth.
Yeah, well, that's a very good example, actually. Yeah, I think that's a very good example.
Anyway, the monster from my side gets a 6 out of 10, same as XJ, even though for different reasons.
All right. I suppose that's our last words. Nothing else to add, gentlemen?
No.
In that case, to our audience, thank you for listening, and thank you for joining us. If you like the discussion, please like and subscribe and all of that. Have a good day.
Yep.
Take care, guys.
Bye.